and welcome to Machtails from the Cantina Live. What episode is this? 29? 30? I don't know. We have been drinking all day. We have a very we are. This has got to be episode number 100 at this point, with everything that we did last year, everything that we've been doing on Patreon. We are a couple men short, so bear with us, please. But we do have some very special guests tonight. We have show producers, Antonio from New Jersey, and this is a long overdue producer debut, Brandon Woolgast. Not only do we don't have a live audience tonight, but we do have you guys tuning in from wherever you're tuning in from. And we have Tyler Page inside the Wampa Cave.
Hey!
And Rich Brindle all the way from Wisconsin. Now, why is Rich Brindle in Illinois? Because tomorrow is the Payne County Toy Show, where we're going to meet up with Jimmy Mack and a bunch of other Patreon members. And you guys are selling tomorrow.
Yeah. 3D printed stuff and toys.
3D printed stuff and toys I am buying. But tonight we're going to be talking about Andor and Solo. This is kind of a long overdue episode because when Andor came out, we did not get a chance to necessarily talk about it on a live show like we are tonight. And the Solo chat is long overdue because we were supposed to talk about that last month, but things changed when we had Craig Miller on. Well, without further ado, would you please welcome to the show producer number one, Antonio from New Jersey. Antonio, we are not talking baseball tonight. Hopefully your Yankees can beat the Cheat Shows.
No, I'm not even talking about it, guys. Let's talk
about
it.
It is a rough situation to be in. And I want to welcome to the show for the very first time, making a debut, Brandon Woolgast. Brandon, finally, welcome to the show, my friend.
It's good to finally be here. I know we've been trying for a while, and I wish I had something about baseball to say, but the Mariners are Griffins and Cattle, so we got that. Yeah, it is good to be here.
Hey, it is good to see you, and it is good to hear your voice because I know you are so vocal about everything that we talk about on the Mocktails from the Cantina Patreon page. Let's just start off. I want to ask you a couple questions. I want to start off by asking you, how were you in? This is kind of like a get to know the producer segment right now.
Let's do it.
How did you get introduced to Star Wars? How old were you? What year was it?
I was born in 76. My parents insist I saw it at a drive-in, so I'm hoping I did. So from day one, when it came out in 77, I think I have vague phantom memories of The Empire Strikes Back in the theater, but what was I, 3 or 4 at that time? So I don't know. Return of the Jedi, though, I remember vividly because during the speeder bike scene, the film actually ripped and it stopped. The entire film stopped when Return of the Jedi came out, and it was almost a riot in the theater. I thought that was a fake memory, but my dad has confirmed that. So I do remember that. But no, I've been a Star Wars fan my whole life. I know that's a typical kind of a generic answer, but it's very, very true. Even when Return of the Jedi came and went, I was younger, of course, had all the toys, watched the Ewok cartoons, middle school starts, high school starts, and I continued Star Wars RPG by Weston Games, Dark Horse comics, all the novels. I know everyone says Timothy Zahn, but true for me too, Heir to the Empire, that whole series, and just it grew from there. So been a lifelong fan. I guess I had a year of my life before Star Wars came out when I didn't know it. But since it came out, I don't believe I've ever really wavered in it.
So you never had this dark moment where, like I got out of it probably from like 88 to 91. You never had this pause?
Yeah, I did a little bit. I know this particular stream isn't going to be about that, but it was actually, and I do not want to get negative at all. I've greatly overcome it. But my dark time was around 2017 with The Last Jedi and all the fallout from that. That's I know. I'm not going to even dwell on it. I'm over it. But it was about a year where and it wasn't the movie. Chris, you know, we've talked back and forth. I don't particularly care for the film, but it is what it is. What upset me was the fallout and the fandom from it, because up until that point, I had not seen it get that ugly amongst people, and that's when I had to take a step back and just reevaluate things. If it comes out and it's Star Wars and you don't like it, then don't watch it. It's like that. Andor, for example, which I know will be discussed tonight, so I'll just say this really quickly. I love it. I absolutely love every episode. But you go online, it's just negativity, and it's just not from everyone. A lot of people truly, truly love it. But it's very hard when it's like, well, then what are you torturing yourself for by watching it? So yeah, I had about a year, 2017 to 2018 or whatever, but it wasn't necessarily because of the film itself. It was just the fallout from it. And it hurt. I mean, I grew up with the the BBSs, the bulletin board systems with FidoNet and everything, going back and forth with people. It was just fun. And it seemed to get very hateful around 2017 for me, from what I've seen. But I have overcome that. It's in the past. Let the past die. But no, it is in the past. So that was my only dark time. Besides that, like you said, in the 80s or 90s, no, I never wavered. I've loved it from day one.
Well, my good friend Jimmy Mack always reminds me that I want to make A Force Among Us Part 3. And he says, you cannot focus on the negativity of the fans, but I feel like it's definitely a part of it. I have to hit the brakes real quick because we forgot to do the tins tonight. This is the good guy tin. These are the Patreon member names. You have to be tuning in live to win a prize. You have to be a Patreon member. Just $5 gets you that opportunity, I would say.
Yeah.
$2 gets you the podcast episode that we do on a weekly basis. But the drinking word of the night, I'm going to have my brother all the way from Wisconsin pull that out of the bad guy tin here, the Count Dooku tin. Count Dooku was a good guy at one point.
He's always a good guy.
All right, Rich, what do we got tonight? What is the drinking word of the night tonight?
You want me to read it?
Yeah.
Ooh, it's Solo.
Oh, it's Solo. We are going to be talking about Solo tonight. I try to rig and I never rig the contest. I never rig the drinking word of the night. But I do want to.
I had him read it because I didn't know he still wanted to rig it.
Yeah, you know what? I do want to give a shout out. Yesterday we had such a great show with Abe, and we had a great show with the Tenudos and Suds. Dark Lord of the
Sons of Darkness.
Sons of Darkness. Thank you for that. Sons of Darkness and Cody Moore. And it's my grandma's birthday today. And I always related my grandma's birthday around Carrie Fisher's birthday because that was yesterday. So cheers to Grandma. It would have been a very late birthday for Grandma. She left us 9 years ago. Cheers. We are drinking tonight. We are drinking an orange whip. An orange whip, a Blues Brothers reference.
Yeah. Really good.
It is really good. It's down the street. We spent a lot of time on the river today, having a couple of drinks and just having a good time, enjoying the weather. But I want to bring back my show producers to let's talk about Andor, because that is, first and foremost, that is the present. So what is your overall take on Andor through episode 7? Let's just start there. I don't want to throw 3 questions at you at once. That is what I'm good at, and that is my blessing and my curse. But what is your overall take on the series? Brandon, you want to start?
Yeah, of course. I absolutely love it. I know, again, I said it before, but you and I exchanged a lot of messages. I am absolutely loving every second of it. I like how some people are complaining it's slow. I am loving how slow it is. Character build up. You're getting to know everyone. Even Cassian, who we thought we knew in Rogue One, but we're getting to know him even better. But the minor characters appearing, I have not learned all their names yet. I'm still trying. But a lot of the ones that died during the heist and everything, they were great. I liked the episode where we got to learn more about them. I'm really liking the ground level stuff that we're seeing in the show. I know Star Wars is Jedi and lightsabers and the Force, and I love all that, and that will never change. But I also like, this feels like the books that the Han Solo and the corporate sector stuff and everything like that. I like the everyman aspect of this. I also like, I could go on, and I know I could, but so I will end it with this right here. But I love the, everyone, as of now, before the last episode it kind of altered a little bit, but before that, no one was really a bad guy. So I'm really liking that. The corporate sector police, they weren't necessarily bad. They're doing their jobs from their point of view. 2 of them were murdered. If anything, Andor's coming off as the bad guy in this. Again, things change now that the Empire's being featured, I think, hot and heavy now, with the fallout from the heist. But up until that point, I really liked the dynamics with all the characters and how no one came off as a good guy or a bad guy. Everyone was shades of gray, from the Imperials to the corporate sector to Andor and his crew themselves. So yeah, I'm loving the show. I'm loving everything about it, and I can't get enough of it.
Antonio, you've been on the show several times, but we've never talked about Andor. What is your take on the Andor series thus far?
Yeah, I have to agree with a lot of what he just said. I'm absolutely loving it. Loving the character development. Some people call it a slow burn. That's just a normal spy movie. You go watch a Hitchcock movie. That is how that usually builds. What I do love that we were just talking about is like that grayness in the character development. I think that's some of the best stuff where just period in Star Wars, the best stuff about our villains is that you sympathize with them, right? Like Darth Vader is the scariest person ever, yet somehow you sympathize with him. That goes down to Maul. That even goes down to Dooku. Tyler, you just said Dooku was always a good guy. You're right. Actually, I 100% agree with you. The reason why Dooku broke away originally, I agree with that. Yeah, right? So the villains in Star Wars have always been complicated, and you connect with them in some weird way, but you get them because they're not truly evil. They can always have that way back, right? Like there's always that way back. And I feel like I can't remember her name, but she's the blonde lady who's the Imperial officer.
Deidre, right?
Oh yes, Deidre. Man, do I love her.
Yeah.
And I
you were saying you don't like her.
I don't like her.
Okay, so Tyler was saying that he does not like her. Tyler, why do you not like her? And how do you feel about the series so far?
I don't like her because she reminds me of someone I work with currently.
Oh, yeah.
And like it's just like I don't know.
Someone you work with or an ex-girlfriend?
A little bit of both.
I see shades in both. But so there's just something about it, But as a whole, I think I've been pretty critical. I do think it's been slower. There's more elements that I feel like they're holding back on putting Star Wars stuff in there, or they're just not thinking about it. And that worries me from a creative perspective. But the story as a whole obviously is really great and it's really well done. And I'm not going to judge it until it's all out. And so far I've really enjoyed it. So,
well, you know what? You would send me a link in the was it the Hollywood? It was a Hollywood Reporter. Yes, you would send me a link about Tony Gilroy saying that he wanted everybody on set to remove their Star Wars minds.
Yeah, he said, you're not making a Star Wars show, you're making a normal show, and it's going to be really good.
Yeah, and you were like, what the fuck is this? So
I want it in their minds. You're making, like, there are rules. In my mind, there's, I want certain elements. Yeah.
Right.
No,
it's hard.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you. Absolutely on that. It's like that was the whole thing with Rebels, real quick. The whole thing with like Rebels initially, they were so afraid about pulling out Kanan's lightsaber. The first season was like all about avoiding that. And that really drove me nuts. It was like, come on, you guys got a great character here and a cowboy, Jedi. Let's get to the action. And I will say this. Everything that I say about Andor being positive is predicated on the thing or the hope that season 2 we actually get to the real Star Wars. I feel like they're avoiding it to maybe get to it.
Maybe
if they don't,
it's a good show though. What were you saying, Brandon?
Sorry.
Oh no, I was agreeing fully with him. If all this pays off, it'll be worth every step of the way. Tyler's dead on with what he said. I think some of the complaints, it's hard to say if they're overlooking things because one of the biggest complaints that I've seen that seems kind of valid is the lack of aliens and stuff. But then I go back, and really, episodes 4 and 5 didn't have many aliens in them outside of Tatooine and Chewbacca in episode 4. The Empire was all white human males, which I think was very deliberate on Lucas's part at the time. And even in The Empire Strikes Back, there are almost no aliens outside of Yoda and Chewbacca, minus the Star Destroyer scene with the bounty hunters. Even on Hoth, all the rebels were humans, every single one of them. In this, I do wish we had a little more, but what's the planet they just did? Neomos or something like that. In the most recent episode, there were quite a few aliens there, but it makes sense in the context of the show, I think, especially on Coruscant, with very few aliens, because the Empire has, at least always apparently to me, been very, very, very human-centric. Aliens are probably leaving Coruscant at this point in the timeline to get away from everything. But again, who knows? But yeah, I would like to see more aliens. That's if not even a complaint, just a critique. It's a critique.
Yeah, sure.
It's a good show.
Yeah.
I would, the thing that I like about it, and you know what? Rogue One is my favorite Star Wars film. Empire was my favorite Star Wars film for a lot longer than Rogue One was. But I think the thing that I love about this is it brings us back to the Episode 3 era. Mon Mothma's scenes were all cut from Revenge of the Sith, and we were following that story back in 2004, 2005, and to see her and knowing that the scenes got cut, to see her get all this screen time, it's one of those things that we've been waiting for a very, very long time. And the last episode, even though it was slower paced, especially my favorite episode so far has been 6. Episode 7 definitely slowed it down a little bit, but it focused on the Mon Mothma character, which we've been waiting for so long.
I loved it.
And the Senate scene, every time I get reminded of Revenge of the Sith, which is in my top 3 favorite films of all time when it comes to Star Wars, I'm like, man, there's something. I don't want to use the word magical because I use that word a lot, but there's something very special about it. We're not talking about Obi-Wan tonight, but the Kenobi show, when I went back and watched some clips from that after Andor was released already, I was reminded about how special that show was. And I still cannot get over the hate that revolved around that show. Because as a fan, I don't want to say I'm lucky to have that, but we are so fortunate to see where that story went on film. It's been in our headcanon for so many years. And I feel like, again, with Andor, it's one of those things where it's like, I want to know more about this character. And people need to give it, the people that don't like the pace, I think that's the overall complaint. Yeah, the pace of the show.
Yeah, pacing, action, Star Wars.
You know what? There's enough Star Wars in it for me because,
especially at the last episode.
Well, Andor himself, Cassian Andor, Diego Luna, that is Star Wars enough for me. I mean, Antonio, you want to chime in here?
Yeah, real quick. So I was listening to the last RFR, and they were having a bunch of clips from Tony Gilroy, and he was talking about how, Luthien has to interact with other key members of the rebellion, and some of them are not going to make it to, Yavin, and some of them will, and how Saw Gerrera is going to be so important to that arc. If that is what season 2 is all about, is like, how do they navigate with Saw Gerrera, and they start to bring in people like, Hera, or again, Mon Mothma coming into it, Bail Organa, because Bail Organa clearly was part of the rebellion before Mon Mothma was. If they start to really connect those dots in season 2, I'm very okay with the pacing here. And that's, again, just something that we've been hearing a little bit from Tony Gilroy, is like, where's the planning going? All right, it sounds like it's going towards a very Star Wars centric world or universe, galaxy. And if that is where we're actually going to land, That sounds fantastic to me, right? Like the politics of who actually is. You kind of saw a little bit like how Saw Gerrera was always on the outside, but like getting to the politics of like who actually makes it to the Council of Rebels in Yavin versus like the people who were essential to that buildup. And like, does Luthen make it? I don't know. Does Cassian make it? Yeah, we know to a degree, but also he doesn't make it all the way to a certain end because he was on a certain trajectory from the beginning of like, I'm going to do this to the end. I'm going to not make it out. I don't know. It's just, I'm very excited for how the rebellion actually shapes up, how that whole thing comes together. It feels like that's what season 2 is going to be about.
You know, I want to ask you, Brandon, do you think you would like to be in Tony Gilroy's shoes, knowing that the fan base of the franchise is very critical and he's got a tough job, even though he gave us Rogue One, he cleaned up the mess, obviously, and he made it a brilliant masterpiece. And I remember when Ewan McGregor was on stage at Celebration, he's like, I just hope you guys give Kenobi a chance. Some fans might not be giving Tony Gilroy a chance. Would you want to be in his shoes?
I wouldn't want to be in anyone's shoes involved with Star Wars, period, in the last few years. But no, I'd like to be in his shoes as an excellent writer, if I could do that or something. But no, the answer is no. He's in a tough spot. It seems like no matter what any showrunner says nowadays, or writer or anything, people can pick it apart here and there. And it seems they're doing that with poor old Tony Gilroy. But so far, if this is what he puts out, I'm happy with it. He can say he wants to not think about Star Wars, but to me, I think I agree with you, Chris. This feels like Star Wars to me. Rogue One is such a a bedrock of Star Wars now, and this feels like it's just a build off of Rogue One. So I think it's going excellent. So no, would I want to be him? In terms of his writing ability, yes. In terms of what he's probably having to deal with behind the scenes, no. So yeah, I don't have much more to say on that in that respect, but I do feel for him because this is an excellent show, and I really wish if anyone's watching this and you haven't checked it out or you watched 1 or 2 episodes and stopped, please check it out. I've seen every episode minus the newest one about 3 times now, and I absolutely love the show. And I just want to throw in what you said. Obi-Wan Kenobi was an awesome show too.
Yeah, I feel like just bringing Ewan McGregor back into the Star Wars fold was a huge thing. But you know what? I do want to talk a little bit about Solo because we wanted to do this last month, and the schedule change and all that. Solo was a film that I only saw once in the theater, and it was one of those things where I was harsh. And Brandon, you had mentioned that even though I did not care for Solo with the first viewing, I did not go and trash it on the internet like a lot of people do. And I never want to trash anything Star Wars related because you were talking about there's a lot of Star Wars fans out there, and they seem to separate themselves amongst the community. And there's a lot of Star Wars fans out there that go like sports fans, right? They're like, baseball, my team sucks. Cubs suck. I'm going to go watch the Bears. I'm going to go watch the Bulls, the Blackhawks, whatever. I am a Star Wars fan. I'm not a Marvel fan. I'm not a DC fan.
Yeah.
I am a Star Wars fan. And watching Solo the second and third time, I'm like, this film is not as bad as I thought it was on its initial viewing. Brandon, I know you are a freak for Solo. Did you feel that way the first time you had seen it?
Yeah, I loved it from when I sat down in the theater for the premiere that day. I loved it. I think I love it more now. I don't think I walked out thinking, "Oh my God, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life. It's a work of art." But I did like it a lot the first time I saw it. Alden Ehrenreich, he was immediately for me, and Sarah, she'll be watching this. She's my girlfriend. She's gonna kill me, but I think I've told you this, Chris. When someone mentions just Han Solo, there's a good 20% chance I'm going to envision Alden Ehrenreich over Harrison Ford, and I'm going to duck for cover when I say that. I'm going to duck. I know.
Right now.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm doing this, but I absolutely, I thoroughly enjoyed it the first time. And now I love it. You and I have talked at length, going back and forth on Messenger and everything. It is. It's not my favorite Star Wars film. I'm not even going to pretend it is. If we're talking about the only two standalone films, really, Rogue One and Solo, I do prefer Rogue One. I think it's better. But Solo is great to me, mainly because it's fun. It's a heist film, kind of what Andor is. Andor's a lot darker, of course, a little more.
Yeah, sure.
But Solo gave us a glimpse into Star Wars that it's brief, but you get to see Star Destroyers being built in orbit. How cool is that? It's just cool. You get to see Corellia. You get to see Kessel. And it's like kind of like I said earlier when you asked me, did I have a dark time in Star Wars? For everyone that doesn't like Solo, I'd say, okay, just don't watch it then.
Right.
You can see him for the first time in A New Hope, sitting in the cantina. That's cool to me. I'm not gonna argue with that. But I think this adds to his character, and I think the biggest fallout. I've talked to some people, especially at work and everything, at length, and they're clearly building towards a sequel for Solo that never happened. Most likely never will. I think we all agree with that. It appeared they were building towards, Darth Maul appears, kind of cool and everything, and it just never came. So it almost feels like it's almost half a movie. This is like a prologue to something bigger that was supposed to happen that we never got, and we probably never will get, barring Disney doing a Disney Plus TV show and all that stuff.
I don't know. You know what? I would not rule out a Solo sequel on Disney Plus.
Never say never. There were chants. There were chants for Solo 2. Solo 2.
Yes.
At Celebration. Like that, that's a big movement.
So and if they just did because you got to think about it, Disney has not done a one-off. Like if they did a Solo Part 2 movie just for Disney Plus, that's not doing a series. Obviously, there's a lot more to invest in a series. Kenobi, 6 episodes. Andor, 2 seasons, 12 episodes. Right? 12 episodes per season?
Yeah.
So if they just do a 2-hour movie of Solo 2, they could totally do that. They could. Antonio, what was your take on Solo? Was it more like Brandon's or was it more like mine? Where do you stand with your initial viewing of that film? And has it grown on you?
Very much like Brandon's. The moment I went into it, I wasn't expecting much in the sense of a piece of, a masterpiece of art. It was going into it looking for a good action movie that was a good heist. And I thought both leads, right, Alden and Donald Glover, absolutely nailed it. And I thought the supporting cast was a lot of fun. Jon Favreau was a really good guy in that. Woody Harrelson was fantastic. I feel like we overlooked the fact that Woody Harrelson was a great Han Solo archetype that bled into what he would become. We don't even talk about Woody Harrelson in that movie. He was fantastic. So yeah, I had a lot of fun with it, and that's all I ever wanted from it. Seeing the fans deride it, let's be honest, that was how many months after Last Jedi? We have to separate a little bit ourselves from the commentary around a movie nowadays on social media versus did we actually enjoy it? I enjoyed it. Did people hate it on Twitter? Yeah, sure they did, but I think they were looking for a reason to be angry. That being said, I would love for a Disney series on that. Like, if we don't get Donald Glover and Alden Ehrenreich, right? If we don't get those two back as those two main characters, that's a dang shame on Star Wars because they killed it on that.
I agree. I couldn't agree more, man. I mean,
right?
They had a great pairing of the two, and I'm just ready for Solo too. And I think the criticisms of Andor are valid, but it's not finalized yet. So
no, I think people have to. We got a drunk Patreon member in the house tonight in the Waffle game. If you heard some things fall, that was just my brother Rich Brendel. But I do want to say, you know what? The thing about The Last Jedi is, and we're not talking about The Last Jedi tonight, but like you said, people wanted a reason to be angry. I don't believe the reason why I did not care for Solo is because Rogue One raised the bar so high that I was expecting a darker, more adult-oriented Star Wars show like Andor when it came to Solo. But I also feel like Solo was kind of, if you put yourself in George Lucas's shoes, I think he would have approved. Maybe he did approve of Solo. I don't know that.
He was on set one day.
He was on set.
You know,
Yeah.
I want to say that he probably was like, you know what? This is kind of how I pictured a Han Solo film. You know, fun, campy,
Right.
that sort of thing. And I feel like with Andor and with Rogue One, to me, that's just adult Star Wars, and that is where I am with my fandom right now. I don't know, but I did not love Solo when I first saw it, but after I watched it second and third time, I'm like, you know what? I felt really bad dogging it, but like you said, Brandon, I didn't go on the internet and trash it. I never trashed the film. I just said it was my least favorite Star Wars film, you know?
I got to say, the best part of Andor for me is that it is actually planned. So like, I can see things coming together. It's not just let's go out there and make this show. So for like to see that they actually have a plan is already saying it's leaps and bounds ahead of, you know, the sequels. And if it ends up just like, if we don't get a season 2 of this, that's an absolute tragedy. But it seems like it's already, you know,
done, right?
They're shooting in November. I can tell you that.
Yes, season 2 is happening. I have a friend that's working on the film, and he's already been signed out for season 2. And I feel like people just need to give this show. Hey, look, I was looking at this show the other day, and I was like, okay, the pacing is a little slower than most Star Wars films. But you have 2 seasons, you have 24 episodes to tell this story. You need to slow it down. And you know what? I remember reading that interview with George Lucas in Starlog magazine back in 1992 that he said, we're going to get the prequels and they're going to be boring because they're going to be about politics and religion with the Jedi. And I don't feel like the prequels were necessarily what you call boring. I don't want to say that's what you call Andor, but again, Lucas has always set me up in my mind that there was always going to be a slower moment in the Star Wars universe, Star Wars franchise, where we need to tell the story. And of course, Andor is not only telling the story of himself, but of course with the politics. And I think that's an important part of what George Lucas had set out to do. Brandon, what was your favorite moment in the Solo movie? Do you have a favorite moment in the Solo movie?
That's a good question. I don't know if I have a favorite moment. Maybe, it might be, I don't know if it's my favorite, but you asked the question, it came to my mind immediately. I love it near the end when the Falcon is falling apart and becoming the Falcon we know and love. I think a lot of people initially, which I was too, when you see it in Solo, when you see the Falcon, it's clearly the Falcon, but it doesn't look anything like the Falcon we, grew up with. But I love it because it's all facade. It's all fake, just like Lando. He's a fraudster. He's all bluster. The Falcon's all bluster. What's underneath is what's important. The Falcon itself could be symbolic or a stand-in for any character in Star Wars. It's what's on the inside that counts. It's all souped up and it looks nice and bright and shiny, but it gets a little rickety like this and pieces just start flying off left and right. It was very deliberate, I thought, and I loved it. Literally the panels on the walls are falling off and you see the Falcon we know and love underneath. It's always looked like that. Lando's just kind of done what he did to it. It makes it look good. And what's underneath is what's important, just like it is for, everyone, every person, everyone in Star Wars. Again, I don't know if it's my favorite scene, but as soon as you asked that, it came to my mind. And if I could really, really quickly, you were right with what you said too. It felt like George Lucas would approve of this. I just remind anyone, it was being written by Kasdan under Lucas before it was sold to Disney. I just happen to have right here the our book, and it is in there. It was Lucas himself that hired Kasdan to write the Solo film and came up with it in general. So it does feel to me like Star Wars. Like I said, I love Rogue One more, but this feels more Star Warsy than maybe not Star Warsy. Just an adventure film. There's nothing heavy to it like there is in Rogue One. This is strictly just a fun heist film, and there is some good character development in it. But yeah, really quick answer your question. I think when the Falcon's falling apart, it's just great, that whole scene. You're getting the Kessel Run in that scene as well. So just a great scene, and I think it's a great symbolism for everyone in Star Wars. You can remove what the exterior, Darth Vader, you remove the helmet, there's the good in him, and kind of like the Falcon to a lesser extent than Vader, of course, but looks all nice and shiny. It's not actually, but it's still got that, the Falcon's got that heart. It's a good ship. It doesn't need to be all souped up, or doesn't need to look souped up to actually be souped up.
Yeah, you brought up a good fact there that George Lucas hired Kasdan to write the story. So if George Lucas was still part of the franchise full time, I believe that you would still see. Here's the thing: you would still see Solo like it is, but I don't know if Rogue One would have been born if George Lucas was on full time.
It's so hard to say.
Yeah,
it would have been a very, very different film. I don't know if George. See, I always thought that George Lucas was a. How do I say this? More of a positive person, more of a. I don't believe Rogue One would have gotten made if George Lucas.
Because you feel like Rogue One is too going backwards in a sense, like
I think Rogue One is too dark and doom and gloom for a Lucas era Star Wars, if that makes any sense.
What about Empire, man?
Yeah, and Revenge of the Sith.
Okay, yeah.
Right there.
You guys just corrected me on that. Yeah, because God, Revenge of the Sith makes Empire Strikes Back look like a Mary Poppins movie, for God's sake. That was a very, very dark film. So, okay, you guys corrected me on the spot. But I do believe it. The heart of Star Wars lies more with Solo than it does with Rogue One. At the end of the day,
yeah.
Antonio, do you have a favorite part or moment in the Solo film?
I think there's a lot of great moments. For me, I'll just focus on the moment that convinced me on Alden being Han Solo, where it's a beginning part where he's trying to, I don't remember anyone's name, but he's trying to convince someone he has a thermal detonator, and he's got a rock, and he's like, he holds it in his hand, he goes, and he was like, I'll throw it, I'll do it right now. And the worm lady is like, that's not a thermal detonator, that's a rock. But it's a perfect moment where
Lady Proxima.
There you go, Lady Proxima. Oh yes, killer memory tonight, Tyler. But that's that moment where Han Solo is like, everything's all right here,
Yes, yeah.
It's that I'll stumble through this, and the way that he sells that was just for me perfect. Just holding the dumb rock where everyone can see it,
and just a little.
It's so dumb, but he sells it so well. And that was like, that always sticks with me. Every time I see that, it makes me laugh. It makes my daughter laugh.
Yeah, I agree.
I do feel like one of the biggest complaints about the opening of the scene is that it was filmed too
dark.
Too dark. We always hear that, and of course, everybody wants to be an armchair quarterback when it comes to filming. Now, I do want to ask Tyler this question. Tyler, what did you think of Darth Maul at the end of Solo?
I was surprised, but it wasn't. I accepted it, in the moment. I'm like, well, they've done a lot with Maul. It feels like they're really exhausting him, but it's obvious. I think that's the most divisive part of the film, so I think I'm okay with it at the end of the day.
Okay, so at first you were a little.
It was shocking. It was very shocking, and I was sitting next to my girlfriend at the time in the theater, and she was asleep. It was like a Wednesday.
She was asleep,
and I'm like, "There's Darth Maul, the guy I grew up with."
And you're like, you know what? This date is going to end right here.
Yeah.
Brandon, what did you think about Darth Maul showing up at the end of Solo?
I didn't mind it at all. It seemed to fit with the timeline that we've had in Clone Wars and all that stuff. It seems to be where he'd be at. Oddly enough, the only issue I had with it was the bizarre need to ignite his lightsaber in a hologram. I get it; it was there for us, the viewers. I understand that, but it kind of odd. But I had no issues with Darth Maul appearing at all. There's always a bigger fish. Dryden Voss was scared of someone above him the whole movie. Didn't know who it would be. When I sat down in the theater, just like everyone else, I had no clue. I assumed we'd find out who it was. Was it going to be Jabba the Hutt? Was it? Who knows? So Darth Maul appearing was a little shocking, but it didn't, except for igniting the lightsaber, which to me felt a little, okay, you're doing it for Kira. There you go. Okay. I'm sure she knows you have a lightsaber. She's probably met you before. But no, I had no issues with it. And just really quickly, if I could, with what Antonio said about one of the best lines, I love The Rock. But my favorite line in the whole movie is when they're talking about the Kessel Run after they get to the planet and everything to unload the coaxium. And, less than 12 parsecs. And Chewie just says something. He's like, not if you round down, buddy. It was a perfect delivery. And to me, that's Han Solo. The thermal detonator rock is Han Solo. For me, it's the not if you round down, buddy. It's perfect. It's just perfect. So, but no, Darth Maul, I had no issues with him. Again, the lightsaber thing, I'm being petty, I know, but it was just kind of odd to me. But yeah, I had no issues with Darth Maul.
Well, my favorite scene in Solo was when they showed two tubes. Yeah. One of the two tubes, at the end. But speaking about Darth Maul, we have Rich Brendel has been a drunken fool on tonight's show. He had changed my Rubik's Cube. Now, if you guys have been drinking at home tonight or smoking whatever you do, this thing might look a little normal to you. But this has been the arch nemesis here inside the Wampa Cave, I should say. People always find something to tinker with, and this is a Rubik's Cube that I bought in 1999, and we had to go on YouTube because Ian Savage came over here about a year and a half ago.
Don't blame it on Ian. It was mostly me.
Oh, it's mostly you. I had no idea that you were part of it. We have a heister inside the Wampa Cave right here. I do want to ask you a very, very serious question. Today I was having some drinks with my friends by the river, and I said, there's something about Cassian that I can relate to. And Tyler says, he's a liar, and my wife hates liars. And I'm like, I don't consider myself a liar, but I feel like Andor is Han Solo on steroids to me. If that makes any sense. Antonio, do you relate to Solo or Andor more?
I guess Solo in that comparison that you just made. I definitely don't want to be Solo on steroids. Solo's lovable scoundrel, but a bit of an idiot, but still lovable.
Lovable idiot scoundrel. Okay. Brandon.
Cassian is definitely right now. He's a blank slate. I think they're going to bring him to that point, but right now, yeah, he's supposed to be the guy that shot his. Everyone keeps calling him his friend. I feel like he's just a contact. But the guy he met in the beginning of Rogue One, he shot him dead when the moment came to it, and he had to make a decision. So he is.
So not only is Andor a liar, but he's a killer. He's always shooting.
He's a killer. Andor has killed many people multiple times without hesitation in his life.
Yeah, because I am not like keeping a tally on this, but I want to say he's killed the two cops, Tivik in the beginning of Rogue One, and
Skeen.
Skeen, which I applauded loudly for. My wife said, "Oh my God, you guys caught me off guard with that." So he's at least shot 4 people out of cold blood. Brandon, do you associate yourself more with Andor or Solo?
If those are my only 2 choices, Solo, I guess. As we've, at least so far, Solo's not outright murdered anyone. He has, but I don't know if we're supposed to see ourselves in Andor. Maybe he's kind of cool, but I mean, not in terms of what he's being portrayed as so far. Like was just said by Antonio, he the first time we see him, pretty much he's shooting someone in the back who I'm air quoting friend. I'm sure he's met him before, at least a coworker, right? And then the first episode of Andor, yeah, it's not right for those people to be, patting him down, trying to get some credits from him. But headbutts one, kills him, murders him, and then shoots the other one in the head. I mean, that's what I loved about the show. And I know, again, like I said before, you and I talked about it back and forth and messaging a little bit there. But that's what I loved about it. He's not a good guy. And that's to go back to what Antonio said really quick too about like Saw Gerrera and stuff. This was like 20 minutes ago now. I think in Rogue One, the scene where in Jeddah City where there's that big attack, the little girl screaming, Jen rescues her. That's Saw Gerrera's fault. The Imperials don't start that fight. Saw Gerrera's crew starts that fight, kills innocent people there and everything. And I think that's what's being really interesting about Rogue One and now Andor. We're getting the rebels being a little dirty, little pockets of them. And Saw Gerrera in Rogue One, as we know, and I'm sure we'll see the fallout or what precipitates that in this. He's been excommunicated from the Rebel Alliance, pretty much, it sounds like, he's too extreme for them. And again, in Rogue One, that first battle we see on Jeddah is his fault. He starts that fight.
That's
a good point.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I am really curious to see where they go with Saw Gerrera, because when Forrest Whitaker comes onto a project, they're not going to use him for 30 seconds in a 2-season series. I mean, he was the Godfather of Harlem, so it's like, he's going to have a lot of screen time in season 2.
Do you think he'll be like Luthen, though? I feel like he'll be critical in season 2, but maybe is not in every single scene. So,
well, what kind of shit is he going to stir up?
Yeah, agreed.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. He might be a cameo appearance, man.
No, I don't know. I almost lost the microphone there.
Well, real quick, Brandon, you just made me have a thought when you were talking about this. I feel like Han Solo and Mon Mothma and Luke and Leia, they're on one side of the rebellion. And then the other side of this rebellion is people like Cassian, Luthen, and Saw, and like all the crazy people, right? And it's this dichotomy of like Han Solo and Cassian Andor, right? One side is the lovable scoundrel, and the other side is the scoundrel who's kind of lovable. I don't know. I don't mean to be so like dumb about it, but I feel like that's a really good split across that. Like, how did that come out? I don't know. That was good stuff, Brandon.
Yeah, those are the characters we should be comparing, and
Right?
you might not
Yes.
intuitively think that.
Yeah.
So where I was going to say, where do we go from here? Episode 7. I know, Brandon, you were traveling, so you did not get a chance to see episode 7, and we're not going to give any spoilers here.
I did watch it once. I have seen it once now.
So, what do you have a favorite episode? My favorite episode from Andor was episode 6. I just loved I loved the natives of the planet. I loved that element. I loved the fact that they were in the celestial. When they were in they were essentially in the Northern Lights. We got to see the TIE fighters.
The eye.
Yeah, that was the eye.
Yeah.
we saw them in the eye, which was beautifully shot, or beautifully created, I should say. And we saw the TIE fighter pilots in action. That was my favorite episode so far. Do you guys have a favorite episode? Brandon, what was your favorite episode?
I want to echo everything you just said. I think episode 6 is probably my favorite, but it's hard to. This is one of those shows that really builds off everything before it. Would episode 6 have been as good without episodes 1 through 5? No.
Right. That's a very good point.
I mean, it's like a lot of people, myself included, by the way. What's your favorite Star Wars film? Empire Strikes Back for me. But is it my favorite? It's because A New Hope came before it. If I didn't know those characters before Empire Strikes Back, it probably wouldn't be my favorite then.
Yeah.
Sure.
And the same thing's going on with Andor. Is that it's really hard for me to quantify my favorite episode. I have loved them all, but yeah, I want to just what you said. I agree with everything you said, actually. And there's just a lot going on in that episode, and it's beautifully shot. It's beautifully done. One thing, when the TIE fighter pilots are taking off, when they're getting in the cockpit, I know Jimmy Mack on RFR, where are the stormtroopers? There are some tiny stormtroopers on the ground in that hangar. So,
Really?
I know we do get them in episode 7 finally, in all their glory, but there's tiny little stormtroopers under the TIE fighters. But I know it's just seeing the TIE pilots get in those TIE fighters. It's taking me back to the X-Wing games on the PC, the TIE fighter games, all that stuff from decades ago now. But yeah, it was an awesome episode. I love the natives, and I'll stop after this, but really quick, I loved how the buildup felt like a spy thriller. What's going to go wrong? When they first show up, you see a couple Imperial soldiers standing there, like looking suspicious. Are they going to point something out? When the natives show up, are they going to do something? I'm like, oh God, the natives are going to do something against the Imperials, which is going to set this. You get this juxtaposition of anything could go wrong. And of course,
yes. I would say it was suspenseful,
Yes, very much so.
There was a lot of, and I think in the storytelling of the pacing of Andor, too, it's got to build up, and then episode 7 obviously was more about Mon Mothma's role. But again, going back, Brandon, what you said earlier was would Empire be as good if it wasn't for A New Hope? And there's things that come before this that lead up to it. And it always reminds me of people that say, oh, the last 10 minutes of Rogue One were the best Star Wars moments ever. But if you take out the whole entire film before Vader's entrance, it would not have been, So my message to Star Wars fans that are cynical, is that the right word I want to use?
They're
skeptical. I want to say that they need to look at the big picture, and they need to wait for the moments to follow, especially when you're telling a story of Andor. Now, does our perception change on the character? This is my last question for the evening. Do you want to know the backstory of Andor, or does it change? Because Tony Gilroy said in that article, it will change the way that we look at Rogue One. And I'm like, I don't want to change the way I look at Rogue One because it is a perfect, beautiful, flawless film. Brandon, do you want to know the backstory of Andor? And does that change Rogue One for you in a tone or a perspective that might not be a positive ending for you?
Yes, I broadly to answer the question, I want to know more about the background of every Star Wars character. The only ones I would prefer hands off, where George Lucas himself should only handle them, is probably Palpatine and Yoda. That's just me, though. But every other character, Andor, yes, I want to know more about him. I don't think if anything, the first 7 episodes have made me love Rogue One even more so. And I'm assuming the rest of this season 2, will make me love it even more. As of now, until something goes awry, and I don't foresee it happening, I have full faith in the show, and I have full faith in me loving the character of Andor even more than I do. It's interesting. His background, actually, I know this is his background for Rogue One, but within this show, we're getting his background even before this show, and that stuff is immensely interesting. Him with the tribe from Neverland, and from Peter Pan of the first couple episodes, the flashbacks and everything. They're running around, and we need an answer to that still. Why it appears the Republic is coming, but they're wearing separatist uniforms and everything. I'm assuming that was not in there for no reason. That wasn't a mistake. They're not making those mistakes. I guess they could, but I don't see that happening. I don't think we're done with it. I think what I've seen online too, a lot of people, they introduced this stuff like 3 episodes ago and it's not coming back. Yet some of it came back in this most recent episode when they went back to his planet and everything like that. I don't think anything's here. No reason. I think it's, as was mentioned, I believe Tyler, you mentioned it. It's extremely thought out. And I think it knows where it's going. It's vaguely reminding me of how thought out like Babylon 5 was for anyone that watched that. Going back, it's like you had to get through season 1 to have payoff in the 5th season kind of thing. But yeah, I have full faith in the show. And yes, I want more background in Andor. And heck, I'll take a Jen Erso show after this.
Can you imagine?
That is going to be an expensive film.
But she shows up at all, even in season 2 or something.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
He'd be hanging with Saw Gerrera at this time, I believe.
Right. Do you think she shows up as like a little girl in the background when they're meeting with Saw Gerrera?
Well, you know what?
That might be fan service. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, as a fan, that would be great to be seen.
Yeah, I would love it.
I don't know. Is Felicity Jones even half as good of an actress as actress? You know what I'm saying? Then Forrest Whitaker. I mean, Forrest Whitaker, if he's going to be in the film, they could get Felicity Jones in there for sure.
Right.
Forrest Whitaker is just as good as Felicity Jones when it comes to acting.
Oh, yeah.
But man, to get her in there, Antonio, what are your thoughts? Do you want to know more about Andor, or does this kind of taint the way you feel about Rogue One?
No, it doesn't taint it. For me, I don't necessarily need to know more about Cassian. I need to know more about his motivations, right? Like, I don't care necessarily where he grew up, what he did, what his favorite cereal breakfast was. What I like is
granola.
Made him, right, exactly. There's always granola with blue milk. But what I love seeing is like the little things that get him to being the guy who shoots his contact in a second like when you're introduced to him in Rogue One. That is where I'm cool with it. Adding on to Rogue One doesn't have to change it, but can supplement it, like make it more. You get who he is when he makes that decision. I'm cool with. So again, I don't need to know. I'm actually absolutely okay if we find out his sister is dead, and that was a red herring all along. Don't care. I really don't care. I really don't care about his sister, and that would actually add to it where he believed in something, and then he found out that what he believed in was a false hope.
Yeah.
So what does he choose to believe in? Like, you can add to that. I don't care about the backstory. I just care about the motivation for the character, and I think they're doing a really good job of setting that up so far.
You know, Antonio, I need to ask you, who is your friend right now that you're giving immense love to?
My dog, Blue.
Blue. No, it's not a Star Wars name. Hey, Blue.
No. Named after Bluey by my daughter.
Oh, but hey, Bluey after the TV show.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, my daughter is a huge fan of Bluey. That is awesome. I had no idea that your daughter was a big fan of that show as well. You know, I got to tell you, my thought, I do not want my thoughts to change on how I feel about Rogue One. I do feel like the service that they're doing to Andor is nothing different than the way I thought about the character. So if they don't change the way that I thought about the character, but they're just showing me how I thought about him visually on screen, I think that is. Could we really ask for anything more than that? I don't believe so. I feel like Tony Gilroy is doing a very, very good job with what he's doing. I'm looking forward to how this thing is going to, play out. I hope there's a season 3. Maybe we don't even need a season 3 because season 2 will give us exactly what we need.
Yeah, I think that's more likely.
I think that's more likely, right? They probably already have it hashed out. So, but hey, guys, we are out of time. I do not want to. You guys know I like to keep this show to an hour because I appreciate you guys for tuning in live. I do want to thank my Patreon member, Andy from Miami, for joining in live. I looked at you pretty.
I was like, I don't know what you're saying.
I do want to thank my show producer, Brandon Wolgast, for finally making his appearance. And Brandon, please keep chiming in on the Patreon threads. I always love to hear from you, man. You are so well spoken, so well thought out. I love reading what you have, and I'm finally glad to hear your opinion on the show. So thank you so much for finally joining us on tonight's episode.
Thank you for having me. It was fun. I appreciate it a great deal. It was a lot of fun, and I hope to do it again someday. So,
hey, you know what? We will have you on next month, as Antonio is no stranger to the show as well, producing the show all the way from the East Coast. Antonio, thank you again for joining us tonight. And Blue, it's Blue, not Bluey, right?
Yeah, Blue, not Bluey. But thank you guys as always. Always a pleasure to be able to just talk some Star Wars.
I appreciate talking to two of the greatest characters, really, Solo and Andor. You know, everybody wants to relate to Luke looking at the sunsets, but you know what? I want to relate to Solo and maybe more Andor without the lie element. You know,
Yeah.
I don't want to be a liar. I do not want to be a liar.
Pretty big lie.
Hey, Rich Brendel, all the way from Wisconsin. I am going to have him pick three names of tuning in live. You have to tune in live to have your name drawn to win a prize. And I do want to say always, Rich, what do we got? We got some names here. Barry Harmon, you are going to be at the toy show tomorrow. He's going to.
Not here, is he?
Barry Harmon is not here, but Barry did the artwork on the shirt. And he is actually. Is he going to be at the toy show tomorrow?
He will be at the toy show. Yeah.
He will be at the toy show tomorrow.
Got another freak, Brian
Klein.
Brian Klein.
This one better be-
We got Brian Klein, Barry Harmon. Remember. Who do we got here? Kurt Holman, producer Kurt Holman, who never joins us. We need to get him back on the show. Hey, you know what? Why don't we do one more? This is going to be the Patreon member plug moment here. As we round out the night. Thank you to my guests, Tyler Page, Brandon Woolgas, and Sean Todd. No, Sean Todd was not a guest, but I want to thank, again, Antonio from New Jersey. Hey, there we go. We got some Doug Mole. Doug Mole in the house. Again, I want to thank my show producers and everybody for tuning in live at the end of the show. I noticed that the live viewers at the end of the show went up a little bit because they wanted to join in. You gotta tune in live. You gotta tune in live.
That's the big one.
All right, here we go. Yeah, we got the ultimate Babu freak. So, hey, Brandon, I am looking forward to having you on the podcast show and another live episode. We need to get to know you a lot more than we did tonight, especially as a show producer. But, hey, I am Chris Mock. This is Tyler Page. This is Rich Brendel. I want to thank you guys for tuning in tonight. And remember, order the Mchtels on. And for you guys that don't speak in Deutsch, that is may the force be with you in German. We will see you next time on Machtails from the Cantina. Don't forget, next show, next Friday, going to be October 28th. Jimmy Mack and Sean Hines will be joining us for the Halloween show. So be sure to tune in live for that one. That one is going to be a night of tomfoolery, hijinks, and spookiness. So long, everybody.